Biggest problems with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial coverage in the mainstream media is they never actually told you what happened. If you watched only CNN or MSNBC, you probably had no idea what the actual facts of the case were, what Wisconsin's self-defense law is, and instead, you got a bunch of screeching opinions, right and left, which leave the entire country much worse off when the thing actually happened. What we always try to ask in that situation is, why that trial? Well, it was pretty convenient for the narratives of the right and left. As I always say here, what they choose to show you is not nearly as important as what they choose not to show you. And one of the trials that's happening right now and getting zero press attention is that of Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman and alleged decades-long sexual predator, Ghislaine Maxwell, allegedly, for the lawyers, who has just begun. And coincidentally, nobody at CNN or Fox or MSNBC seems to care all that much. So I'll break it down for all of you. Maxwell is finally on trial, the date set for November 29, after her defense team has buried the court in motions for dismissal and complaints over her imprisonment conditions, over trying to interview case agents involved in the Epstein case, and so much more. It's been a very long road of passing the buck to this point, and a lot of Epstein watchers like myself have been puzzled as to why more information has not come out about that case. Maxwell is being tried on 6 counts specifically of sexual assault, including transporting minors to engage in criminal sexual activity. The allegations against Maxwell stem from criminal activity, allegedly, in 1994 and 2004. Now, that's critical to our understanding because these actions took place before Epstein's sweetheart deal with the Palm Beach County Police and the FBI, where he barely served any jail time and eventually was let off and victimized hundreds of other young girls. Yet, even with the old charges, there are a lot of very powerful people with a lot to lose. Vicky Ward, one of the reporters who's known about Epstein for the longest time, she writes in Rolling Stone magazine that the rich and powerful in New York City are terrified about one thing in particular. If Ghislaine Maxwell takes the stand in a last-ditch effort not only to save herself, she can do so to burn many of the people who helped her survive over the last several decades. Maxwell, in testifying for her own defense, would be allowed to admit and say anything in open court as long as the judge rules that it's in favor of her theory of the case. Now, her defense so far has been she didn't do anything wrong. The only person who did was Jeffrey Epstein, and that because he's dead, she's being put on trial in his stead. There's some truth to that, certainly. But nearly every Jeffrey Epstein victim reports that Maxwell allegedly groomed them, that she procured them for his abuse, and in many cases she participated in the abuse herself. She also, of course, served as a very important social validator for Epstein, bringing Prince Andrew into his orbit and Bill Clinton, many other powerful people that she became acquainted with through her rich father's connections. That raises another question. Within the accusation against Ghislaine Maxwell is an acknowledgement by the federal government that she and Epstein did not act alone. In fact, Maxwell maintains that others were involved too. Their names remain redacted. And interestingly enough, it's not just Maxwell saying that. Epstein's victims, who are concerned that these 2 women whose names are redacted are apparently cooperating with the government in exchange for not having charges brought against them. One victim said that it just wasn't right that Maxwell alone faces trial when so many others were involved. And indeed, that is what this trial highlights to me. It's really just not enough at all. We're talking at the end of the day here about just 2 cases of sexual assault when we know that she and Epstein were involved in hundreds of others, allegedly. Of course, Epstein had many valets and assistants and personal acquaintances who helped him. But honestly, it's deeper than even just the assault in the hundreds of cases. The question surrounds his longtime entanglement with some of the most powerful people on the globe. Take, for instance, a story which we highlighted but will never go to trial. Barclays' former CEO, Jess Staley, was forced to resign from the head of one of the largest banks in Europe because regulators found deep ties between him and Epstein. So deep that they found he exchanged 1,200 emails with Epstein over 4 years that included unexplained terms in an apparent code, which was known to them, including the term, quote, Snow White, which means he has refused to explain what that means. Ugh. Staley has claimed that he let his relationship with Epstein taper off. But in fact, right before he joined Barclays, he was literally on Epstein's private island and sailed his yacht there. He also allowed Epstein to, quote, mentor one of his daughters during her college application, which is certainly a choice. And Staley is the only in the latest of series of high-profile men to have been revealed as Epstein associates. We have Bill Gates, or Leon Black, one of the richest men on Wall Street, who paid $150 million to Epstein for tax advice. Or Glenn Dubin, the billionaire hedge fund manager, whose wife apparently also dated Epstein and literally had him over for Thanksgiving dinner at their house while he was on probation. Or Leslie Wexner, the original source of Epstein's wealth, who has never once said why he allowed Epstein into his inner circle in the 1980s. None of those questions are getting answered at trial, but we'll continue to ask them here. And the media should be telling you a lot more about Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. They should be digging into the men that I mentioned. But that's too hard, so we'll get more race-baiting coverage instead, designed to rip us apart, while the real villains, they lurk right above us. And I think that's the crazy part here, Crystal.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns, I'm sorry to say, Tucker Carlson, a man who gives Tuckers an even worse name than they already have. This week, as he now seems to every week, Tucker set off a bit of a firestorm.
So we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars. It's a mockery of the U.S. military. Well, China's military becomes more masculine as it's assembled the world's largest navy. Our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, whatever feminine means anymore, since men and women no longer exist.
What are you talking about, you performatively outraged wedge salad? Now, he's packed a lot in there, from transphobia to weirdly extolling the masculinity of China's navy to his completely misplaced outrage at Joe Biden over those flight suits, which were part of an initiative that started when Trump was president and also included ensuring that body armor actually fits women service members, which is obviously a good idea. Those comments sparked an all-too-familiar cycle of condemnation, defensiveness, and hype. And it seems like every week now, Tucker has another one of these mini controversies. Last week, it was the doctor's...
Joining us now, the one and only Brianna Joy Gray, host of the Bad Faith podcast and former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders. Great to see you, Bri.
Good to see you, Bri.
It's good to be back.
You've been hosting some of the most interesting conversations anywhere recently, and we want to dig in particular. You did a series of 2 different podcasts regarding the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. You kind of dug into some of the specifics of what exactly happened and the legal issues involved. And then you had a broader conversation about white supremacy and is the term overused and how does it apply throughout society and where does this concept come from with 2 people the Breaking Points community be very familiar with, Army Osei Frimpong and Zed Jelani. First, Bri, if you could just set up for us, what was your inspiration for this conversation and what were you hoping to get at in this conversation?
So not just in the context of Kyle Rittenhouse, but in this broader context of the CRT battles that have been waged for about a year now, the question on everybody's lips is sort of, what is white supremacy? And is white supremacy being bandied about in a way that basically makes the term meaningless? Oftentimes in these conversations, people end up talking past each other, right? Because people who are more to the right, more conservative, see the left as being overzealous in their application of that term because they understand what white supremacy is very differently. And part of the whole battle around CRT is challenging a more structural understanding of how systems of race and oppression work in this country. And whether or not you agree that those systems of race and racism or oppression or hierarchies are real, for a lot of the population, calling those systems white supremacy feels like a bridge too far, given their understanding of white supremacy as being something more direct. A guy in a KKK robe, someone saying you can't work here because you're Latino, etc. And so I wanted to unpack what we mean when we say these kinds of things so that we can have more grounded, realistic conversations that don't just end up with us talking past each other. And then also move on to this more substantive conversation of, given the confusion around these terms, and given the fact that even those who believe in systems and hierarchies of oppression are often misusing or differently applying the term white supremacy, how useful is this term? If everything is white supremacy, how useful is it to use a term that is so confusing and misleading and difficult to understand by a bulk of the population that you're actually trying to reach?
Yeah, I think it's been so valuable what you've been doing. You've been getting a lot of attention, and I'll tell the right-leaning listeners here, you've had on a lot of people who are very distant necessarily from mainstream left thought, and you've totally heard them out. Andrew Sullivan and many others, and I think that's why, despite the bad faith name, probably the best faith conversation.
Very true.
It's ironic.
I know.
It's always ironic.
Let's give people a taste here of the clip. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
So Kyle Rittenhouse, he's not a Bond villain, right? Like, he's an indeterminate joiner. He just kind of joined the team that made him feel like the most relevant, right? So it's kind of what Hannah Arendt said about Eichmann. And the same, like, these bad guys are not particularly bad. They're just participating in a bad structure. Like, it was like I was watching Ralph from The Simpsons on trial. This guy is not some sort of super villain. But yet it takes it takes a series of institutions actually before you actually find this guy across state lines with a large weapon shooting people. Like, we have to talk about the families that produced him, the schools that failed to produce him. He's a social failure. And at 17 years old, he's a youth. And we say that youths are not actually responsible for what they do. What they do is actually a reflection of who their minders are. So it's a reflection of us, right? So we need to actually do a real autopsy into all of the cultural institutions that created that moment.
What did you make of that moment, Brianna? And what was Zed's response to that? Because I know some of the tension between Irami and Zed was Irami wanted to say, this is connected to what happened in El Paso. This is connected to what happened with those massage parlor shootings. They all come out of these cultural institutions that was saying, wait. You can't just paint with a broad brush like that. So what did you make of those exchanges?
Yeah, I don't want to misrepresent Irami, so people should feel free to go and listen to the full episode. But the case he was basically making that there is something wrong with quote unquote white culture. And while we often hear, especially from the right, Black culture described in these terms, there's often questions about, where is the father? Where is the two-parent household? These kinds of conversations that often, I think, detach us from having a substantive policy conversation about how to actually enrich the communities and make life better for human beings, working people. Irami is basically saying there's a white cultural problem here as well. And you can see it tethered through all of these different kinds of events and the rise of certain kinds of hate crimes and violence from this particular community over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, Zed objected, saying basically that it's as inappropriate to make that kind of broader white cultural leap as it is to say the same thing about a broad Black culture when cultures are so diverse and diffuse regionally, ethnically, and among kind of racial groups, we can have a conversation about, the socially constructed nature of race, et cetera. But that is inappropriate to do so. And my addition to the conversation was that there's this theory by these women, the Field sisters, professors, both of them, who wrote this book called Racecraft. And I asked whether talking about whiteness, white people this way ends up shoring up a kind of racial identity that is less productive, less healthy, and ultimately perhaps feeds into a kind of politics that I don't subscribe to, instead of letting people identify by their regions or their cultural backgrounds, Irish, Italian, Jewish, etc. And that creating whiteness by talking about whiteness in this way is ultimately exactly what white supremacists are angling for.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I just want to say, I tweeted, Joe Rogan had Snoop Dogg on his podcast, and Joe said something where he said, if they can keep us divided by race and nationality, then they won't they won't have us talking about class. I'm paraphrasing him a little bit, but that's the gist of what he said. And what I loved about it is it was getting attacked from identitarian lefts and also far right white supremacists who were like, well, if we're divided by race and nationality, like maybe that's what just actually divides us. Something.
Right.
And it was like a strange horseshoe on that. I'm curious, you have been delving into this now. This is a series and a conversations, very difficult ones, especially I think for somebody who occupies the ideological lane that you do to have. How have you found the reception to this, Brianna, in pushing for the type of politics? I actually think there's a lot of commonality here on the screen.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you have to take what the response is on Twitter and the response on YouTube and the response in real life. Those are all three very different audiences and three very different things. I've gotten a lot of personal feedback, but there's a lot of folks in the world who feel this way, right? And there are shades and gradations here, but I think what's really helpful to people and what gives me some leeway here is that I am also coming to terms with what I think about these things kind of live on air, right? Mm-hmm. I'm working through issues in a really sincere way. There are things that said that I absolutely agree with. I'm more inclined with him to think that talking about whiteness and white cultural deficits is not productive and is frankly inaccurate. But I also understand what Iremy is saying about there being something more than just a gun violence problem in America, right? That there are these cultural, localized trends that emerge, and that has something to do, I think, less with cultural whiteness, but with broad precarity, status threat, the white decline, the opioid crisis, all of these things that we know are going on but are so infrequently brought into the conversation. And as moments of tragedy continue to erupt over the country, whether they're around protests, whether they're around these kind of political moments like 1/6, we're going to be really challenged to come up with a concrete and consistent way to measure our response to things that's not so polarizing and ideologically driven. And I think starting now and being able to say, look, Kyle Rittenhouse has been embraced by some of the worst toxic elements in the country. He's also a 17-year-old kid. And if we're leftists who have this kind of abolitionist framework that understands that we don't want to be locking up children in particular, and that people are products of their environment, then we have to figure out how to talk about this that doesn't minimize the broader cultural trends and what people are making of this, at the same time that we don't try to make a martyr out of someone who doesn't necessarily fit the mold of our cultural expectations in this moment.
So there was another moment that we pulled of some of Iremy's commentary that kind of gets at some of these questions because Iremy, and again, like you, I don't want to mischaracterize his comments. We're going to put the link down in the description box so you guys can subscribe and you can watch this episode. And I highly recommend that all of you do that because these conversations have been extraordinarily enlightening. But he's getting at this idea. He believes kind of the core problem is white culture. And that a focus on material conditions, things like healthcare, things like potentially UBI or a federal jobs guarantee, et cetera, that you're kind of missing what he sees as the main problem, which is related to but not exclusively about these material conditions. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say there.
There's going to be a problem with me and a lot of left politics because I do think, like in a deep way, if like a vaguely ethno-fascist government politician like supported universal health care, the left wouldn't really have the arguments to fight against it.
Agreed.
And that's a problem, right? that is a problem. And so like the idea that we're okay with a racial hierarchy as long as it delivers goodies and it seems to work in such a way that is short of self-governance and self-determination and it might be a little bit high on like coddling racial anxiety of the whites, as long as it delivers goodies, is a form of white supremacy. And I think that's like a large part of the left.
And you're saying that's where we already are, basically. The goodies aren't great, but that's kind of the status quo we're in already.
The question is, and the people who want to get out of that status quo want more goodies by catering to white culture as it is, as opposed to, I'm saying that like we might need to like downgrade the goodies and go full board on changing the whites.
Well, I would object to that.
So part of what I found interesting there is that you agreed with him about the initial comment about, I think a lot of the left would be good with an ethno-fascist as long as they gave out universal health care. What did you think of his comments there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the reality that people are in a vice grip. People feel desperate, and they would make a lot of trade-offs. They continue to make trade-offs. They've already made trade-offs, to my point, right? Joe Biden is Jim Crow Joe. He was the author of the crime bill, and yet the overwhelming majorities of Black Americans lined up and voted for him because the alternative seemed worse. And we've been caught in that kind of vice grip, right? The goodies right now are simply not Trump. I mean, that's how low the bar has gotten, right? But what I disagree with Irony about is this notion that whiteness, in quotation marks, is the best offer you can give to people, or that is necessarily at the top of their priority list, of white voters' priority list. Since the beginning of this country, we have an upcoming episode with Ben Jealous, the youngest ever president of the NAACP, who walks through a little bit of this early American history, where part of the reason that we had racial codes, race was codified in the way that it was, that set rules about the progeny of mixed race couplings being Black, and making sure that people understood there was a consequence to being Black and aligning with Blackness, is because some of the earliest kind of revolutionary moments in this country were white indentured servants and Black slaves coming together to resist authority, right? To resist their oppressors, the people who literally, frankly, owned and directed their entire lives. And that by creating racial division, you can break up very natural coalitions. And that has been a pattern over the course of American history, Bacon's Rebellion, Blair Mountain, et cetera, on and on and on. And so I resist Irene's what I think of as a kind of essentialized view of the matter, which says no matter what, the only thing that you can offer to white people that will work is necessarily racism. It is coddling whites. It is giving up something you shouldn't be giving up. It is throwing people of color and other marginalized groups under the bus. When, in my view, history shows us that offering basic populist programs that enrich people's lives is more attractive than offering racism. It's just what has happened is that it is very infrequently offered, and we don't have very many test cases for what happens when someone like an elected Democrat like Joe Biden or Barack Obama actually follows through with their populist campaign promises.
Yeah. I think you really are having some of the most important conversations. We really appreciate it. That's why I wanted to highlight it here. I hope everybody subscribes and supports your work. It's really important. So we'll have the link down there in the description. Thank you, Rihanna.
Thanks, Bree. Great to see you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We're not going to have a full show for you on Thanksgiving, but we will have a lot of extra content, which we've worked on here on the show. As Crystal said in her monologue, spend some time with your family. Just don't talk about politics. Just relax, but really unplug. Take a time to appreciate, everything that you might have or maybe have lost. It's a time for everything. That's what Thanksgiving actually should be all about. And for those of you who have supported us now over the last couple of months, it just absolutely means the world. It's going to be something that I'm thankful for. Really, 100%. Yesterday when we talked about YouTube and coming and demonetizing our segment on Peng Shuai, the amount of support that we've heard from you guys is just amazing. Today we covered Jeffrey Epstein. Guarantee you that one's going to get demonetized. Today we covered Waukesha. Guarantee you that one's probably going to get age restricted or whatever. But what we take our responsibility as is to show you the news unvarnished in the best possible way that we can. And sometimes that means going afoul of YouTube. So if you can help us out, we deeply appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much.
You guys have allowed us to do that. And for that, we are extraordinarily grateful. So have a beautiful week. We will be posting some content throughout the week and a number of things on Thanksgiving as well, if that's how you want to spend some of your time. But most importantly, enjoy your friends and your family. And we will see you back here next week.
See you next week.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
I want to start with some of this Rittenhouse stuff. Kyle Rittenhouse appeared with Tucker Carlson last night. They really talked about a whole range of issues. In cut 5, Rittenhouse reacted to Joe Biden, the president, whose campaign had portrayed Rittenhouse as a white supremacist. Here's what the freshly acquitted Rittenhouse had to say with Tucker. Listen.
Mr. President, if I could say one thing to you, I would urge you to go back and watch the trial and understand the facts before you make a statement.
That's not a small thing to be called that.
No, it's actual malice, defaming my character for him to say something like that.
Actual malice is the legal standard for a defamation lawsuit to succeed in the case involving a public figure. So I think that phrase, actual malice, it didn't come out of nowhere. My guess is Kyle's having some conversation with some lawyers. And in fact, he said that's precisely what's happening in cut 7.
I have really good lawyers who are taking care of that right now. So I'm hoping one day there will be accountability for their actions that they did.
Okay, so you're intent on you're not going to let that go.
Like I said, really good lawyers are handling that.
So he had some really terrible lawyers at first, including that nut Lynn Wood, who he revealed treated him horribly. And then he got much better lawyers. He has gotten not guilty verdicts across the board. And now it sounds like he is entertaining the idea of defamation lawsuits against some people. Jesse, your reaction to the interview last night?
Hunter Biden might have to sell some more paintings because Joe might have to pony up some dough. This is a legit lawsuit. He was slandered with malice, I would add, because you can't call someone a white supremacist with no evidence. Obviously, the facts were out there at the time when Biden said that. The video was out when Biden said that. So that was reckless disregard for the truth and defamed this kid who now his defense lawyer says he's going to probably have to change his name. And he's going to Arizona State next year. Good luck with that. You know, to some, he'll be a hero, but other people are going to want to knock his head off. So I don't see how he can go through life after this ever again. It's interesting that a black militant sex offender with a felonious record mowed down, at least 55 white people at a Christmas parade. And Joe Biden said he wanted to make sure the facts came out before he said anything. Yet 2 days after the incident in Kenosha happened, Joe Biden slandered Kyle Rittenhouse as a white supremacist murderer. So obviously, Guy, you know how the left rolls. If there's someone that's innocent of a certain color that they can exploit to pursue their radical agenda, they will. They don't care about the truth. They care about their plot line. But if something happens that kind of goes against the grain, they'll bury it. And that's why you don't even hear a lot from Joe Biden, Kamala, or the mainstream media about the situation.
Well, they'll make up a narrative, right? The narrative is set in advance and they'll make up facts, quote unquote, to fit it, even if it doesn't apply. For example, the racial component of the Rittenhouse shooting, which was just all white people, but they decided it was racial, which is why so many folks out there, including many journalists, apparently believe that there were black people who were shot. I mean, that's how deep the misinformation runs on this story. We talked about it on the show yesterday in particular. And actually, Jesse, since you brought up the media and sort of these plot lines that they establish well in advance, I have gotten now in the last 24 hours, 2 text messages from left-leaning friends who are genuinely surprised and confused about their preferred news organizations basically memory holing what happened in Waukesha on Sunday at the Christmas parade.
Yeah.
These are left-leaning. One guy's very left. One guy is, I'd say, left of center.
And these are, CNN, New York Times, those types of people. And they're saying there were 5 people killed. There's, kids in critical condition, dozens of victims. And it was a huge thing Sunday night with scant details on Twitter. And it is not completely gone, but it has been really pushed away and downplayed as a national news story. Now it's kind of like a local curiosity to these news organizations. And I just had to almost say, you sweet, naive children, like, I love you guys, but this is what they do. And I hate saying this, but I think it's indisputable. If the driver of that SUV had been white or had been using a gun, right? A different weapon, different race, different narrative, this would be absolutely wall to wall. And we'd be having a massive national screaming fest about all sorts of flaws and systemic racism and all this stuff. And I think people were chomping at the bit for that. And then it turned out that it didn't quite work the way they wanted it to. And it has been maybe not fully memory hold, but the level of coverage has dropped off so obviously, so brazenly, so precipitously that even my left-leaning friends were like, wow, this is sort of wild.
It would be, if you reverse the races, a mass casualty hate crime attack at a Christmas parade. And you'd see this perpetrator's face everywhere. You'd see it on magazines. You'd see it on CNN and MSNBC. The nightly news would be leading with this day after day after day. We're not going to see this guy's mugshot, Guy. We're not going to hear about his social media posts. It's interesting that all of a sudden, after he was arrested, his Facebook page was taken down. Now, I highly doubt he had an iPhone inside the jail and he deactivated his Facebook account. I highly doubt that he did that. It was done for him. And I got some screen grabs from it. And this guy's traffics in anti-capitalism, anti-white, anti-police content.
I think I saw some anti-Semitism stuff in there too.
There's some wild conspiracy, anti-Semitism, Hitler garbage that's chock full of in there. It's almost like someone could, create the perfect storm of a black supremacist, drug-addled ex-sex offender at large, felony warrant out of Nevada, got his 15-year-old girl pregnant while he was pimping her at large. And you can't make this stuff up. And he's out on low bail because some
very low bail
after DA. After hitting his girlfriend with another vehicle. So this dopey DA lets him out because he's soft on crime and he wants to empty the prisons and it's kumbaya time. And so this guy's just like a revolving door, puts him back out on the street. And now, women and children and the elderly are being pieced back together at the hospital. So this is a story that wouldn't go away for months, possibly. I mean, if this was, you reverse the races, this would be another January 6th.
Oh, it's Charlottesville.
This would be right, Charlottesville. I mean, one person was driven over by a car in Charlottesville. You have 5 dead here, 48 injured. And they've...
Speaking of the fantastically wealthy, the unfair, and so much more, a great scoop from, and I want to make sure I say his name correctly, from Teddy Schleifer over at Puck News, which is a new outlet. Let's put this up there on the screen. Teddy uncovered that Jeff Bezos has now given $100 million to the Obama Foundation. It is the single largest philanthropic donation of its kind in terms of presidential libraries. And according to Teddy's reporting, the $100 million donation was midwifed by Jay Carney, Bezos' political Sherpa, and the former Obama press secretary. Before Obama's press secretary, he worked for one Joseph R. Biden as his press secretary. So here's where it stands right now. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in America, well, second richest, I guess, if you count Elon Musk's stock. So let's say Jeff Bezos, the second richest man in the world, worth over 100-something billion dollars, just gave $100 million to the former president of the United States' his presidential library. He was like, I want it to be named after John Lewis, out of the kindness of his heart, of course, because that's why all people give people significant amounts of money. The single largest donation to the entire Obama Foundation and to the Obama Library. And it was brokered specifically by Jay Carney, a former Barack Obama press secretary, and with close ties to the Biden administration. I remember the most extraordinary thing that happened during the campaign is when Jay Carney on his Twitter account, which he often uses to contest stories about Amazon, tweeted in his personal capacity how he was all in for Joe Biden. And I'm just like, this is crazy. I mean, you have here the head of global vice president of communications for one of the most powerful companies in the entire United States, just openly cheerleading for a presidential candidate. And now we learn that he himself brokered this $100 million deal between the two of them. And now Valerie Jarrett, who is a longtime Obama aide, says that Bezos and Obama, quote, have seen each other socially from time to time.
In the same
I mean,
circles.
they're in the same circle.
Yeah.
Hanging out with, the most revealing thing Obama did is right after leaving office was going to go hang out with Richard Branson. I still believe hanging out on a private island with a billionaire.
Really sent quite the message, didn't it?
That's who he is. And that's they're celebrities now. The Obamas, they're doing these deals with with Netflix. They're Instagram influencers. I mean, at their best, Michelle Obama's doing arena tours for her book, Becoming. And I don't begrudge them. Like, they're becoming, lifestyle figures.
I 100%.
Well, okay, I begrudge them on a personal level. I'm saying it's not illegal, but it's gross.
Yeah.
And, Matt Stoller, who's, a big foe of the Obamas, let's put this up there on the screen. He points out that unlike all presidential libraries, Obama's library will not be run by the National Archive and thus is not subject to government rules because it's not a library. And research historians are actually offended because it is a private nonprofit entity rather than the National Archives and Records Administration, which is the federal agency that administers the library and museums for all presidents going back to Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
So Obama is above all the other presidents. He creates his fancy little project. By the way, I don't know if you guys remember this. I covered it at Rising whenever the Obama Foundation called in all of Chicago's business leaders to push back against environmental activists who had concerns about the building of the Obama Foundation.
Well, part of the controversy here, too, is that the fake presidential library, the library that isn't actually a library.
It's a monument to Obama and how great he is. That's really
it's being built in public parkland.
Of course.
So there's actually an ongoing lawsuit against the city especially because it's being run by a private foundation rather than by the National Archives and the government agency the way it normally is. They're arguing it's inappropriate for the city to give public parkland to a private foundation.
Yeah, and it is. Look, I actually grew up in a town with presidential library, probably unlike most people. They're awesome. In George H.W. Bush's library, it's cool because they have stuff, the pieces of the Berlin Wall or whatever. I went there when I was like a little kid.
Yeah,
and you go and
I've
get
been
to
the
see
LBJ one.
Right, you get to see, the Air Force One mock-up. The LBJ one is a good library.
I've also been to the Bill Clinton one.
Yeah, me too. Hope, Arkansas. The Reagan Library is actually very nice. I'm trying to think if I've been to any others. Anyway, these libraries are useful places for children. They have conference rooms, it was even part of the community. You could rent it out or whatever. And, the Bushes, Barbara Bush and President Bush were there all the time. I mean, when you're a little kid and you get to meet the president. Anyway, what I'm saying is they can actually be very, very good for communities and for perpetuating history. It's one of the original places that I actually got to learn some history and see some of that stuff. But to have it then be degraded to not even a real library, not a real research institution, because people go to that Bush Library where I grew up in order to actually do research, and now have it at a place where Bezos is pumping $100 million into this thing for not. Look, this is pure oligarch patronage. We all just call it for what it is.
Well,
you know?
both of these guys, what they have in common is they're very interested in their public image
Right,
and their
and that's
legacy.
Bezos. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He cares a lot about voting rights. Get the hell.
And so, he really, really cares about Black lives, as we've covered here. Let's ask Chris Smalls about that. Who
Ask
we
his
had on
black
the show.
employees that.
Who we had on the show yesterday.
Right.
I would say, I mean, listen, it's hard for me to get super outraged about, the inner workings of the fake presidential library. But what I would say overall is, we've been covering these stories about how the biggest problem for the Democratic Party is not any of these, culture war flare up, the CRT, those debates or whatever. The actual biggest problem for them is they're seen as out of touch elite assholes.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have like Nancy Pelosi officiating the Ivy Getty wedding, you see those photos come out. When you see, it's not just Bezos, by the way, also involved in this library are a bunch of different Bill and Melinda Gates, Sean Parker, Reid Hoffman, Mark Benioff, all involved. So when you have that association, you're supposed to be the party that cares about working people. At a certain point, and that point has already occurred, people are like, you're full of it. I mean, we see who you want to hang out with. We see who you're really interested in, being part of their circle. We see what's going on here. And it also ties back to, in my mind, Democrats love to talk about the problem with money in politics, which is a dire problem and something we cover here a lot. But then they play the same game.
Yes,
I mean, they're not any different.
Didn't we? We were pointing this. One of the stories we considered covering at some point is that after Citizens United, it's actually Democratic dark money groups that are spending more money than Republican groups.
Yeah, so how are you going to have any credibility? And then it hamstrings their agenda. I mean, this is the reason why the Biden agenda has completely collapsed from whatever moderately good thing it started as. It's all because of their ties into the donor class. So it has real world consequences ultimately for what can get accomplished here and also for what people believe their government is capable even of doing.
No, I completely agree with that. And, this is just naked, outright. It's a payoff. What it is it's like social laundering. It's why Bezos owns the largest house here in Washington, D.C.
It's reputational laundering.
Yes, it's reputational laundering. It's why he bought the Washington Post. If you screw with Bezos, you're screwing with one of the most powerful papers here in D.C. And he has set himself up as a power broker. He's hosting salon dinners. From what I hear, now that he's not CEO of Amazon, he's here all the time. He's always having politicians over at his Calorama mansion, which is like 3 houses all together. I've never been invited.
That's the same neighborhood that Obama used to live in.
Of course, he still lives
there.
He has a house very close by. Okay. I walk my dog by there sometimes. That's the closest I'll probably ever get there.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
If disaster had a face, it would look like this. You recognize him. This is Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister. He set a whole new benchmark for being disastrous. Watch.
That you love, but that you love. The woeful imbalance in productivity across the country. Hands up anyone who's been to Peppa Pig World. Not enough.
What's wrong with Boris Johnson? Well, we don't know. We recently spotted the British Prime Minister at the coastal town of South Shields. He was supposed to meet British business leaders there. On the 22nd of November, Johnson found himself in a room full of audience. He walked up to the podium with one hand in his pocket, another clumsily holding a bunch of papers. All seemed well in the beginning. It was, business as usual. Things began going south when Johnson was spotted looking troubled. Whether it was his trousers or something else, we couldn't tell. 2 minutes later, the Prime Minister was back at it. A couple of minutes later, the Prime Minister was not himself anymore. While pitching the idea of EVs to business leaders, Boris Johnson decided to transform himself into a car engine.
EVs may not burble like sucking doves, and they may not have that rum, rum, rah, rah that you love, but they have so much torque. EVs may not burble like sucking doves, and they may not have that rum, rum, rah, rah that you love, but they have so much torque.
All the vroom, and bra left the Prime Minister off track. He veered off course. He lost his notes. So he stood there scrambling for the right piece of paper for 21 long seconds. Here it is.
Forgive me. People will have the confidence to
You guys
stay
are
nearer the place they
ridiculous.
grew up, to start business, secure more funding.
They're like
It has,
freaking out over
very
fucking
safe streets,
Boris
and a pig that
Johnson.
looks like a hairdryer, or possibly a sort of Picasso-like hairdryer. Forgive me.
Because he lost his note. Well, he was talking publicly and he misplaced whatever page he was on. So he just like went off script, but obviously just did a really, really awful job because he's not in drama class, and I'm sure that he's never done any kind of like, what do you call it, improv class or anything. So obviously, oh yeah.
Strong enough to support on a 200-pound frame. Abracadabra.
Ha ha! Abracadabra.
My life escape from your love dungeon was the most exciting thing I've ever done. It was. I know, so I can do it again. But this time, don't make it so easy. No. Oh, I did. Too much? Not from MacGyver.
Okay.
You haven't seen my orzo. Orzo.
What's that?
You haven't seen it anywhere.
I don't know what that is.
Orzo?
Yeah.
It's like a white tube.
Nuclear power plant. The energy generated here is transmitted through undersea cables right back to America.
You know, Mo, that sign is powered by non-American workers.
So what? Your beer's German and the TV's Japanese. Justice. Oh, God, misfire! Now I'd like to introduce you to your new manager. You'll find his integrity and dedication make him untouchable.
Oh, you scared the shit out of me.
What do you call the moisture on your skin?
Now, tell them how to run a nuclear plant.
Did I say man, what did I do? The bookmarks gave me. Okay, look. I didn't read you and you didn't read me. We're both in this together. So say something smart or get ready to run like hell. In business, as in breakfast, fried eggs have fragile yolks. Huh?
Physics med parce qu'il y a MIT.
Regarde, Tom, Italia Bajai, va pas sauter, l'autre saute un. Oh, he's got the meeting out of his hand. I think you dusted him, Smithers.
Sir, can we talk about this arranged marriage of mine?
Oh, indeed.
Yellow.
Dad, I got a right report on the Great Lakes.
Just outsource it to Lisa. Outsourcing is the answer to everything.
Also, I can't sleep at night because there's this new bully who follows me home, and why is he in the house?
Outsourcing.
I'm very glad to see you. We were outsourcing. I myself have found work with several American companies. IBM Helpline, this is Brian. Have you tried disabling your firewall? Dallas Fort Worth Marriott, how can I help you out? Well, we have Cotton Bowl Special. Go ahead, it. This is Queen Mama Jumbo. The stats tell me you have a question. Oh no, Jenna, don't be dating that boy. The boys don't lie. He's bad mojo, girl. Next. Okay, here's the plan. You lock me in the trunk of a car and park it under the pier at low tide. All I need are these everyday objects. A nail file, a farmer's almanac, a gun with no bullets, some bullets, and 3 of my MacGyver writers.
Sounds great. Can we do it during lunch?
Now!
Something I don't know how you're doing it, but you're outputting 10 times the power our American plant ever did.
Well, a little book West told me. Having only one pancake to leave room for more bacon.
I see what you're saying. We're grabbing your plate. In fact, there's no need for us to be here at all. Let's go, Smithers.
You're giving me absolute power?
Mm-hmm.
Sir, not to interrupt.
Absolutely not. When it comes to running a nuclear power plant, this man's a god.
I would be
Now,
gone
excuse me, I'm
somewhere on the
Mr.
beach,
With my scooped up monkey head to get
sea-doo, butt-ass naked going through the Caribbean Ocean. Then I would jump on my boat and just be like, fuck it, I'm going to Cuba for a bit. Then I go, fuck it, I think go to Bora Bora for a bit. I'm gonna be gone.
These guys are pretty cool. Maybe I have one of them. Only I get some kind of room. Run, please shoot him! I am a god!
Sir, I really don't think we should have left Simpson in charge.
No others took. Floating down the Ganges with my new chums.
Those are corpses.
You never let
Those are
me-
corpses.
Well,
Predicted the future once again.
What's going on?
it doesn't have a time.
Crazy car.
No, it doesn't. Oh, well. I wonder if they did.
One of these doors is almost-
But to be honest, I think it's just been happening a lot, and it's only because of now that we have internet and people are like so like uptight and like now everyone's seeing it.
Who doors are tigers? One of those tigers is named Homer Simpson. Welcome home. Guess who made MacGyver burgers? MacGyver? We didn't have any ground beef. Yeah, but you did have Slim Jims, a cheese grater, and rubber bands to hold it all together. We gotta get rid of this group. I got an idea. Which episode are we watching? Alice for Lake Tahoe, Part 2. Last name MacGyver for I Have Sinned?
Oh, we thought maybe you would like to see some of our globe-trotting adventures. This is Selma, in line at the Luray Caverns. It turned out it was the line for the ladies' room. This is the ladies' room. This is us at the Alberta Canada Carriage Museum.
I want to go somewhere.
Land out. But those sheds. Surrey. 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 Selma. Surrey.
You're in a tight spot, MacGyver. This calls for your most ingenious escape ever. It's Olive Garden coupon. It expires at midnight.
You're not holding a coupon.
MacGyver away!
Well, he's gone. Yeah, and we'll always have what he wrote in our window shade. What did he write down in? Grape juice and tears.
This is here, my only friend. So, Mr. Burns, you were saying my dad is going insane and thinks he's a god and broken off all contact with the outside world?
I told you something before, Charlie, sir.
You know, Smith, I told you so as a friend. His name is Shut the Hell Up.
Om Nam Shivaya. Om Nam Shivaya. Om Nam Shivaya. It's a sacrifice.
Oh.
Can you pass me that piece of paper on that box? On the next to the bong. Next to the bong in front of the TV? Yeah. That'll work. I think. Oh, it's too big. Didn't I just... Fucking teeth. Meg in Family Guy.
Where?
Oh, is it Meg? No, it's Haley. I think actually they also do it with Meg too, where she's a programmed robot, or she's a programmed Russian assassin, and it's just like, oh, it must have not worked, and then it's just like some kind of code will activate her. And she's actually, the reason I remembered this was because she says that she is undercover agent 2476, and that is my parents' phone number.
Oh, yeah.
So that's...
Activate 2476?
What is it? Say it again?
Activate.
Yeah, something like that. It was like activate 2476, or it was something like with that combination that like just kind of triggered it into my memory. I found out that there's a girl that actually she can remember like up to hundreds of numbers, like memorize like up to like hundreds of numbers, like just like off the top of her head. Like if you just like tell it to her, she can remember it because she makes a story out of it. Like she assigns certain numbers to certain letters and makes a story, which I thought was very cool.
I mean, put a lot more spaghetti than I thought I did. That sauce is filling. Oh, wow.
You're fired. You're all fired. 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 Fired.
Well, that sandwich was good. For lunch, thank you.
I kind of made it as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, it was good.
The fucking lettuce was frozen.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why it was frozen. I went to an Indian wedding before.
Oh, that sounds cool. You didn't dress up though, eh? Apparently they are totally cool if like white people like wear their, what do you call it? Burkas?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Apparently most cultures are actually cool with white people. At least if it's like for like an event and like everyone's wearing them. Just like to not feel like left out and like the stereotypical white person. They're like, yeah, totally. You can wear one. apparently Native people and not so much.
Well, like I said, it's because they didn't consider us humans. That's the only reason why they were able to get away with what they did. Because, like, if you try to do that in India, just because they have a different way of living, different culture, it's because we're still living, like, it's because they have leather and, like, bows and arrows and shit like that. They're like, oh, these guys are uncultured, uncivilized.
Oh, we totally accidentally stumbled upon you because we thought we were hot shit. And we were coming to find China, and we didn't find China. We found the natives. And because we're fucking white, we like to take advantage of privileges. So we totally took advantage of the Native Americans.
They followed the land. They followed the coast to get to China.
I don't know what the fuck they did, but
we're gonna try to brave the ocean, see if what happens.
I honestly, I don't know what they did, but they should stay the fuck over there. Or they could have come by and they could have just been, I don't know, they seem to be the one who are savage. Because they just fucking rape, murder, and kill fucking children and women and take advantage of people who are trying to offer them kindness. And we go, ha 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 ha, you fucking idiot. Like, I don't know who's the savage here, but and apparently, like, what is it? The Iroquois, the Algonquin, whatever. Apparently, you guys aren't down for each other. So apparently, your people, you kill the shit out of each other. So yeah, no, you guys sound pretty brutal. Sounds like you could have fucked them right the fuck up. Oh, I found it! Yes!
Has anyone seen this name?
He's wanted for Derek the
Oh.
Mr. Jacobean.
Oh, can't wait to eat and shove this in my mouth. Yeah, no, apparently tribes used to fucking fuck each other up. So I'm pretty sure when we fucking rolled up on you guys probably could have fucked us up too. The dinner thing, Thanksgiving. What the fuck is the wampum tree?
Pretty much it was for all tribes to throw down their weapons because it was like the 100-year war.
Okay.
So all tribes decided to put their weapons down for no more war. And they buried their weapons in the ground. And the wampum, it's like a leather strap with like it has like it's like I don't want to say pom pom balls. I don't know what they're called.
What do you say, Miss?
But anyway, they have that. And you guys came along and ruined the peace of the entire country. There was peace among the entire country. And because of our, if we didn't do that, we probably would have been able to fight you guys off.
Oh, absolutely! Didn't you guys fight against like Vikings and shit? So yeah, I think little weedy white boys don't know their fucking head from their ass because they can't even fucking get where they are. Like, they don't even know where the fuck they are. And they just roll up on people being like, This is obviously China.
Gunpowder and guns beat us, just like how Japan lost to China.
All guns need to go. All fucking guns need to get the fuck out of here.
It was China or Japan. But they had samurais or old
May I escort you
like,
to Rayleigh?
I don't know what they're called. The samurais, I believe, are the ones that like don't have any armor or anything like that. And then you have the other ones with the big helmet and the fucking Komodo suit on or whatever. Yeah, there was a point where China finally got gunpowder and small cannons, guns, mini guns,
Well,
the Gatling guns on wheels.
good to know that he will not trade.
Here, I thought you guys didn't drink on the gay flower.
Stop calling it that.
Whatever.
I was saving his booze to mess up the Indians, but seeing what good pals we
Here
are,
you go.
I wanted to give you a taste. Say, I know a good drinking game. Take a sip every time a wave hits the ship. Oh, you're good at this.
Oh, Lord, thank you for this generous rain and abundant lightning. Obviously, kissing your ass is getting me nowhere.
I thought you were supposed to play.
And where's our crew?
Huh?
I thought you were supposed to play your game.
We don't want to miss
Yeah, we are, but
Here, Tom.
I started really late, so I kind of cooperate.
Horseplay? Roughhousing?
I didn't think it was that late.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's the Nate what's responsible.
Lindsay, don't start fucking with my dog.
Hello?
I was
Baby, a man has needs.
Not you, baby.
Guess we'll never make it to the new world.
Well, when we landed, I was going to denounce my sister as a witch.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, the ability to add two-digit numbers is not witchcraft. 31 plus 43.
This weekend, it's our monthly
Grandpa,
tournament.
this is madness. We can burn the witch later. Right now, I've got to save this ship.
Probably
Hey, I've been trying
start
to
out
drop
with
since
it
I was
again,
12.
but
But first, who's going to help me pee? They're looking at me because I have the key to the stocks.
Wow. This is really good.
is it? I fucked up in so many things. I forgot to put things in,
Wow.
which is basic meat sauce right now. Very bad at keeping track of what I'm supposed to put in.
Man, that bird did it all. Good guy.
Hey, I just thought of a name for where
Got
we're
a
going.
YouTube video of the wigwam shit.
Oh, that's real creative.
Wait,
What do you
wow.
call your foot, you hunt?
At least I'm pitching.
Land ho!
Ha ha!
Shut up and kiss me.
Great chief, big gun.
Yeah.
We could never survive our first year in the new world without you. I almost regret what we Europeans are going to do to you.
What are you going to do?
Oh, give you the biggest slice of pumpkin pie. Also, we're going to take your land and wipe you out. Who wants whipped topping?
It's all because of our cheekbones. You can tell in my face that the native part is going because of the white blood that I have in me. You could tell. Look at my face.
No.
Look at me.
I do.
Look at what the white man's done.
Part will tell the second, which is usually.
My blood
Hey,
is
just
no
trying
longer
to
good.
take the pressure off.
Trash. I am an
Well, one
abomination.
time I read this boring comic book about a ship called the Bounty.
Don't eat the bay leaf. You're not supposed to eat the bay leaf.
Come on. Captain Bly, there's a message from Admiral Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Fly eats dolphin boogers. Well, when you eat as much dolphin as I do, there's bound to be a booger or two in the mix. Good morning, crew. Welcome to day 718 of our voyage. Today's announcements. First of all, in an effort to save water, you will no longer be given any water. And because of a drawing of
Oh my
myself
God.
having romantic congress with a merman, I am dumping all your mail from home into the sea. And I can assure you there were cookies in there. Good cookies. The kind only a loving mother or Millhouse's father could make. No, he died while making the letter.
I'm getting pretty tired of seawater. This is nothing like the recruiting brochure. Maybe that's what happens on the last day.
I'll warn you, Captain. Push this crew too far, and there'll be mutiny.
Mutiny? I'm a bounty? What have you been smoking?
Opium?
Besides that.
Yeah.
Welcome to our tropical paradise. Enjoy our luaus, our lagoons, and our ladies. And remember, what happens in Tahiti stays in Tahiti.
Because we have no way of communicating with the outside world. Tell me, has Robert Fulton invented the steamboat yet?
Any day now.
You're on a holiday.
I don't look like that. Make another.
Yes, Lord Prometheus.
Lord,
Don't you sit
Huh?
Bye-bye. Thanks for staying with us. We appreciate you putting cloth over our women's boobies. You'll receive an updated bill every week. Bye-bye.
I wish we were back in Tahiti.
My answer was
It's
early
so
on in
good.
vacation. I order you to forget it.
Got to
And while
breathe.
you're working, I want to hear a sea shanty in a round.
you actually put a fucking dent in there. I'm surprised. Usually I don't eat what I make.
Rounder. I hear edges. You're on key.
I always in the mix, bitch.
You don't sound like you've ever been outside in your life. What the?
I'm gonna have to go get the heater.
Let's
Cold.
not be hasty
My
there.
fear of freezing.
What if I introduce a suggestion box?
Your slippers at the front door.
You made it from the head of the last guy who had a suggestion.
Shove it. Back.
I warned you there'll be mutiny.
Just start rowing, Willie. And sing around when you do.
Row, row, row your boat. Gently
Yeah.
row, row. Merrily, merrily, bound you down the gently down the merrily down the river. I cannot do it. I'm only one man.
You'll sing or you'll mutiny. And you're too much of a spineless coward for that. Swim faster or I'll have you made into soup. What are you gonna do? Go underwater? I'd like to see that. Ow! You call this deep?
This is your new captain saying, next up, Tahiti. And we're going to remove all evidence of the British regime, starting with this stupid wheel. Well, I know you had your doubts, men, but there they are. The most beautiful women in the world. Penguins. Well, look at it this way. We're going to discover the North Pole. South Pole. Oh boy, do I suck. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm starting to think the sea captain isn't coming back. He's out there playing basketball.
In your face, Julio. I'll be fetching your food right away. 6 more games. Well, I guess we have time for my tale of moist adventure. It takes place in a dark time for
I know I should
mankind,
stop eating
when
the spaghetti,
madness and
but I don't want to
ignorance
waste it.
ruled.
I feel like wherever they're eating, I've been there.
70s.
The last place I've been to that was like that was amazing. I sat there on the terrace right over the beach. It was like nighttime, it was nice and cool.
Up here.
There were some seagulls, but like they didn't come down to bother me. Gotta get here. Gotta things called the captain's platter. Oh my god. Fucking crab legs, lobster tail, claws, squid, shrimp, fucking cockles or whatever the fuck they're called. Razor.
I was like 20, so I only yelled at the bouncer. I was like, I'm motherfucking Canadian. Not only there's the age limit significantly fucking younger. Significantly. Also, I've been doing this since I was like fucking 12. Like, I've been drinking since I was 12 years old. Not here to drink. Just want to get my fucking tea. I think I was being a total fucking asshole.
Maybe not so lovable. And you've got the
I was
elderly
really
Jewish
too
couple
gross
making
for
their first trip to Israel.
Our son Shlomo is working on a kibbutz in Haifa.
was being an asshole for trying to get a dick wet.
Jewish, all right.
What's our backstory? We're the band. And we're on!
Why is fucking being mean or like bullying mean you're cool?
And most of you will not be saved.
I thought like cool kids were lame and not cool.
I think leaders are cool. Those are cool people. And I don't mean like your president or prime minister
Well, no
or
shit.
cabinet or whatever. You can see like certain people.
Yeah, but so many people fake it now. Like
Yeah, it's kind of easy to tell though.
so many people can like literally buy the future, or like they can actually like pay money to know what the next big thing is gonna be, or like know what people are gonna be into next. And it makes them seem like some fucking open-minded thinker or whatever. Fucking Elon Musk. That guy's a fucking asshat.
Just me, Flanders.
Mm-hmm. Great mustache.
Over me, I should feel no pain.
Oh. Ah.
It's almost New Year's.
I have to come to the fact now that I don't think I'm ever going to have facial hair.
3, 2, 1.
Told you, you need to shave it.
My resolution is to be more fun.
Attention, everyone. I've spent the entire cruise reading these maintenance brochures because as a lonely single, I've had nothing better to do.
Gotta shave and shave and shave and shave. It's so annoying.
I thought
Having
so.
to buy razors
It says here we should head upwards towards the
Let's
hole
use mine.
before the ocean starts filling the ship.
Really.
Now listen,
Ah.
get us all
Hurt
killed.
enough.
The safest thing to do is to resume our normal activities.
I'll
Now
feel
where's
like
the
pulling
rope?
it out of my skin.
Okay, so that's left.
I like men's. No, just no.
Yum, 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 yum. Who that?
My husband replying to my I hate babies apparently.
What should we do?
Give me a second.
Fuck these babies. Nobody.
What? I have great ass suction. How about a little privacy? My cheese!
Whatever you do, don't look down. I made up.
Who's playing that weird
I can't
music?
do this anymore. It's too confusing. Oh!
Not that confusing.
Jam!
Move aside. I'll use my Swiss Army bone.
I knew I should have stopped.
Stop.
Can't.
It's just
Can't
this
eat.
flooded area. Somebody
I
had to
stopped
take
and I
it
knew I
over,
shouldn't
straight
have.
through to the other side and tie it off so we can use it as an underwater guideline.
I'll come back to it.
Paprika in there, but
Thank you.
it's not spicy. It's that
What I
red
need is
pepper
some
powder,
inspirational music.
like an actual like red pepper that's not green or yellow. I don't know if it's red. And that's just such. That's the red
All right, I can see
Bleh.
Glad you enjoyed the skitty sauce.
All I could do was roll.
I think all four of those 3 cans, it was like
Tell the world that I saved you all.
$3, under $3.
Tell me what to do.
The noodles are like what? $4.
It feels so gross.
You also knew these skitty.
I really want to put the original on, but I want the flavor to stay in my mouth.
Just suck on the leaf. Did I put a bay leaf in yours?
No, Jack. Yeah, you put a bunch of babies.
Really? I'm gonna put 4. Oh.
You guys know the way to eating? Way to go,
Better eat
genius.
that.
You said into someone else's table.
Better eat that.
At least I'm not Jay
Don't
from Skeleton
save
Curry.
me. I don't need your
ripped up
saving
table
for
75 years
garlic
ago.
bread.
That's not Jay. You keep believing me.
Shit.
Jay, you keep it basic.
Damn it. That's what we need. Actual Q-tips. Not those stupid dollar store ones.
Those are the dollar store ones.
Well, those ones.
Those are I paid full price for.
Well, they pay like higher than
$7.
Oh my god. They're the same type you get at the dollar store for $1. They break off in your ear and shit. They're really easy to break.
Oh, no problem.
But then again, like, it's not Q-tips.
What the fuck is that? Yeah. Some others such a trick. Try to scare the dog out of my door.
I hear what you said.
Some weird hipster chick tried to scare me out at the front door. I've never seen her before, but like, I think she had like blue hair or something. But like, she did. I don't even know where she like the blank gun stare where she's like. I was like, what the fuck? Like, she came in our side of the building though.
What is that?
Orange owl.
What the hell is that?
It numbs your mouth.
Why are you trying to numb your mouth?
Cause my fucking tooth hurts.
Oh, you got the dentist give that back?
No, I got the fucking pharmacy.
Oh, I didn't really. It says you can put that shit in your mouth.
Keep walking, monkey. Don't worry, Mom. You'll pass by.
From the day born in the alley to the day you are hit by a car, there's cream to drink and mice to eat and great big balls of yarn. It's the circle. It's the circle.
I love the use of streamers as blood. It robs the violence of its power. Woo! I'm drenched in blood.
I don't know why I trust you. I guess some cats just never listen. I feel so
Half my face is dumb.
It's just because, like, the thingies here that you cut are, like, just, like, eloping it. Your shirt is all cut.
Oh.
And then like half your ass sticks out when you bend over and your pants are half down.
And that's why we're always fighting and fighting and dying of my igniting. Check it out, like scripture or something. It's the circle.
Isn't it like Tuesday?
Yeah.
He also graduated from the Springfield Elementary. You became such a success. You always got straight A's.
You want to take it out now?
Yeah. I'll just pass it over to you.
Wait, what?
So just pass it over to you.
You're not gonna be able to lift that up.
Yeah.
No, Matt. No. You're not fucking do that. Sorry. No, that's why I was gonna do it. Why do you want to do that now? You're
As
supposed
long
to
as I only drop it one direction, which is this way.
Fuck no, you're not. I paid a lot of money for this fucking thing.
Mine puts it out.
Brand fucking new. We gotta move all that stuff first. I was hoping you would do all that stuff. So I can move the couch, can move this, unless you want to take
What do you
this.
need to move all that for?
What do you mean? You want to move the bed? It's gotta go that way? That stuff's in the way? Or this is in the way?
Skinner, you've got to deal with these kooks.
Don't worry, I have a plan. Pretend I agree with them.
You better hurry. Look what
Okay.
they've done to your car.
No, that's
How much fucking space do you need?
Well, you don't need to stop now. You're bringing the bed there.
Today we celebrate the first of many diversity forums.
Pull it out.
That women appear to be worse at math than men.
All
What
right.
is the source of this illusion?
Not that
I'm
hard.
doing this right now.
All you gotta do is fucking pull it out.
Believe me, I
Gotta bring it somewhere and it's
Put
fucking
it
hit.
on the floor.
The principal's a tranny.
am I wearing women's clothes?
Oh, women.
Women. I look in my closet, I don't see male clothes or female clothes. They're all the same. No, of course
What are you
not.
doing?
Women are unique in
What are you doing? Why are you touching my stuff? Look at my stuff. What are you doing?
Sorry.
Yeah, you spit on me. Yeah.
Just tell me what to say.
No, this morning I was fucking freezing. I had to put the oven on.
Due to nervous exhaustion.
I was afraid I was gonna set off the smoke alarm. That happens sometimes. So when I fucking do it. What?
I just finished eating.
You're making this so complicated.
For too long, there's been an anti-woman bias in math. Boys are aggressive,
What?
obnoxious, and never let us be heard. From now on, we're splitting the schools in two, separating the boys and the girls forever.
You heard your principal. Girls on the left, boys on the right.
This class, no more stupid girl classes like ballroom dancing.
Oh, that's not still mandatory for everything, Willie.
What?
I hope this is gonna fill the water.
Not gonna fill the water.
Oh, wait.
They're going to divide the school in two?
Well, there's never gonna be a time when it's not wet out at this point, Cam.
Awesome. Now I can walk down the hall with Bart Jr. hanging out. You look like Bart Jr. Oh, the schoolhouse.
You've been holding it?
Nice facility.
What?
You've been holding it?
My woman
I didn't pull the window.
Yeah, you know what a
Oh my god, you're the slowest human being on the
I'm
planet.
not breaking it. Okay?
Great with another male invention, the car.
Fucking your computer. Get your shit out of here.
15 men also have rocket ships, suspension bridges, constitutional government, snowshoes, brass knuckles, pinball machines, the Renaissance. Oh, why did women invent sleeping on the couch? Girls, Edwards, have an empowering day, my pony-loving leaders of tomorrow. Right, open this cage, but no biting.
You're not the boss of my teeth. So beautiful. Oh, paintings by female artists. Frida Kahlo, Georgia O'Keeffe. Oh, Kathy Guy-White.
You have a knife in your
Now that the
hand.
boys and their atmosphere of intimidation are gone, we can finally breathe. Breathe, ladies. Now let's buckle down and do some math. How do numbers make you feel? What does a plus
Oh,
sign
really?
smell like? Is the number 7 odd or just different?
Are we going to do any actual math problems?
Problems? That's how men see math. Something to be attacked, to be figured out.
But isn't it? I mean, confidence building can't replace real learning.
Lisa. Sounds like you're trying to derail our self-esteem engine. Let's sing it back on the track.
The best thing I can ever be is to be okay with me. Okay, boys school. I need a challenge. A mental challenge.
Yeah, but like, why do you
I'm not
be
busting
so
this.
slow?
Who can tell me the volume of this snowman? Anyone?
Just add the volume of the spheres. We know the
There you
radio.
go.
You forgot the volume
I
of the
know how it
cat.
works. Thanks for running.
Space times height. Oh man, I have
I
missed
just
you.
think flies out to the right. I'm
Principal Skinner.
Oh, let me guess, you screwed it in.
Groundskeeper, you peep.
Assistant
No.
Groundskeeper Skinner, don't you think it's wrong that I can't get the best math education because I'm a girl?
I don't have any opinions anymore.